So once again, if I put a section right here, it's going to be an elliptical shape here, and it's pretty tricky to build. But again, if you cross the diagonal, and just kind of showing that piece, that's going to give me the center. The center, when it's projected on the sides, and in this case it's going to this vanishing point, so I can estimate it going there, or actually draw it in. And it gives me these 4 points. This is the major axis, this is the minor axis for this particular shape. And it's going to be coming in a little bit, but I'll worry about that later. From each corner, from this part, from the center out, if you can look at that space and visually divide it into thirds, that's what you're trying to do on all these shorter sides of the diagonals, to look for the space and just visually divide it in thirds. There's ways to draw it all over the place, but just trying to simplify it. And once I have that, I now have 8 points that if I drew a straight line to them, it would give me the octagon. And for most purposes, it would give me that elliptical shape that I could then draw within that piece. Now, the shape of the piece is not that big. It's not going to be taking the whole section. So I'm just going to move it in a little bit as I draw the elliptical shape. And that's going to give me the base of this first shape of the pawn. If I can take the center line and just elevate it straight up to give me the approximate height of this, it's kind of going from the height to the width. Now we know that's symmetrical. The depth is the same, but visually in perspective it would be that shape. So if I can start to estimate or even make this a little bit smaller for the first one and just see how I project it up. So I've used the square of the checkerboard to help me build this up. And there's the ellipse. And again, trying to keep it somewhat simple. So now here's the top. The top part's going to be a circle. So I'm trying to build that just off that center line. As it comes down, I can try to give myself the width of that piece, even though it's going to come inside and out. And what happens is it goes to the other side. It's tapering down. And you just have to make sure that all these elliptical pieces don't have sharp corners on either side. This has a thickness to it. So I'm just building that part up. What happens underneath I can't see because I don't have it tipped, but it does taper. So I can start to taper the line itself. And now it hits on another ellipse that's elevated. So if I can kind of look at this base one and then try to estimate this just to get a freehand sketch into it. And now it arches out into a bigger piece. So you can see you can't see the undercut, but you can see how it's laid in there. So just kind of building that piece up there. And pretty much that's the part sketched out. And then all you need to do is just go back, heavy it up, and start to pick the lighting, the value scale. So I'm just going to find these edges here. Depending on which one you use as reference, you might have slight variation here. And just curve that in there. Now the easiest one is the one that we've worked with, which is the circle shape. So once I do that, I can find, just like before, find the highlight or the light source, and at least locate the base tone and let the quarter and half tone fill in. Start to build that up. As the light hits the top of these shapes, again, trying to lose that line. This is the cylinder which we've done, so if you just treat it with the light coming from here, there's the highlight. When it gets down to the curve, let it follow that curve. And it might have a little quarter tone, so it's almost a solid piece. And now this part's kind of round, so if I did a little bit of the cross contour, you can see it's divided in half just to get that shading. And then the last part is in the light, but the other part is tipped over there. So there you kind of have it. And now the cast shadow, not worrying about the piece on the board, but just the objects that have it. This little collar of the pawn kind of has a shadow cast underneath it. But if you look at it, it arches this curve right there. Let's see if you can't place that in there. So once I have kind of the basic piece, the circle, elliptical shape, the sphere, casting it onto there. And there you have the beginning. Anything from this point on is just refining it. Again, trying to lose those edges, find the base tone a little bit better, and just blend it in. So see if you can pull that part together. And again, base tone's going to be a little darker. Across. And for now, don't worry about the cast shadow till we get the other parts in there. So the pieces going in. Let's see if you can create that first.